you are. Thank you for joining us here today. Welcome to the concluding session of our conference. Hopefully you have attended our previous sessions and they probably convinced you to pursue a PhD degree. The next question would be how to choose the right path for you, what right program, which includes choosing the country of education. And this session we'll be discussing this very question, covering different pathways in the USA, Asia, and Europe. We have a lineup of 3 speakers with rich experience in different countries, China, Japan, Germany, USA, that can give their perspective and share their experience along each pathways. It's a great pleasure and honor for me to introduce them to you. We have here Aisha Yesbolatova. She received her PhD in life science from the National Institute of Genetics at the Graduate University for Advanced Studies in Sokendai in Japan. She's an expert in molecular and cell biology, including gene editing, protein purification in vitro assays, which led to multiple job offers in Japan. However, she chose to pursue research opportunities abroad. Currently, she's a postdoctoral research associate at Dartmouth College, where she investigates vaccine-elicited antibody transfer during pregnancy and after birth. Transitioning from 5 years of graduate school in Japan to the US has been a significant shift and enriching her understanding of and appreciation of research across 2 different cultures. Next, we have Galymzhan Issabekov. He's a medical doctor and PhD candidate at Charité Universitätsmedizin, Berlin, Germany. He earned his MD from Peking University, Beijing in China in 2017, following the completion of neurosurgical residency at Beijing Institute of Functional Neurosurgery. He later conducted the research at the University of Florida, USA, studying the effects of microgravity on the astronaut's brain. During this time, I had a pleasure to meet Galymzhan in person. He also completed a 1-year neurosurgical fellowship at Tokyo Women's Medical University, sponsored by Takeda Science Foundation. Currently, he's pursuing his PhD in the Department of Neurology in Berlin, focusing on synaptic dynamics and deep brain simulation. He's also a colleague of ours. He's a founder of the Kazakh European Science Association, a hub for Kazakhstani scientists and innovators to network, share experience, and foster collaboration in science. I just want to add from myself that they organize many truly interesting events and should stay tuned for their social media posts.
Your slides are not moving, I think.
Oh, sorry. Here we go. Thank you. And the last but not least, we have Damir Akchurin. He's a PhD candidate in civil engineering and Richard Hickman Fellow in the Department of Civil and Systems Engineer at Johns Hopkins University. He received his bachelor's degree from the State University of New York Polytechnic Institute and his master's degree in Johns Hopkins University. Damir's research interests span a broad range of topics related to stability of steel structures. His current research at Johns Hopkins University focuses on developing the next generation steel structures using design-by-design analysis method. In addition to being an active researcher, Damir devotes a significant amount of time and effort to teaching and mentoring the younger generation of engineering students to foster an interest in the field of structural stability. I'd like to give a round of virtual applauses to all of our speakers who could join us today. So I'd like to start off reflecting back to my own experience back in 2017 when I was choosing between different PhD programs. So I had 3 options: OIST in Japan, Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology, Cambridge University in UK, and the College of Optics and Photonics in the US. And fast forwarding later, I chose the last one. And the question is how to make a right choice in this kind of situation when you are just off choosing your PhD, and what would be the first thing you would pay attention to? Let's start from Aisha.
So in my case, I didn't have a choice that you had. I was accepted and I only applied to one program. And that's because I first had an internship at the same lab, at the same university. And after that internship, I really got interested in the topic that I was doing experiments on. And I had established really good relationships with my future mentor. And so it kind of went organically for him to invite me to apply for a PhD program as well. And I thought it's a good choice. Later, of course, I thought maybe I should have applied to several programs as well to try myself, to see other options. But then at that time, everything worked well for me, so I didn't apply. Another reason was I was very busy in my last year of bachelor's, and so I also didn't have time to prepare like for specific subject exams that you need to pass to apply to PhD programs in the US. So at that time, I kind of prioritized my focus on finishing up the bachelor's and then applying just to a single program. So at least in my case, that's how it was.
It's great to hear that it worked out for you,
Yeah.
the program you chose. Galymzhan?
Yeah, sure. So I had opportunities to stay in several countries during this more than 10 years, and I just made brief summary. So first question, as you said, how you describe your research experience, academic and funding difference between different countries. So let me start. I stayed in China more than 10 years. And as you see, academical environment, it's very hierarchical, mainly focused on high journal impact factors and industry collaboration. So this is specific of these countries where I stayed for minimum 1 year, maximum 10 years. And I also asked other members from our association, what is their view to this let's say, condition of these countries. So here you can see it. Let me start from China, since I stayed more than 10 years. So I said mainly hierarchical with strong industry collaboration, early career research. I think it's very challenging for junior research to gain independence if you compare to US and Germany. And research culture is very high pressure on results, and quantity over quality. And funding sources, I think it's mainly government driven, and a lot of fundings you can only take from government. And challenges, I think it's currently, like couple years ago, it was integrity issues, but now they dealing with these issues very heavily. And second one, I think it's hierarchy favors of seniority and also competitive funding. Innovative culture, I think it's like the area which is national priority of country. I think this is the most important where you can get fundings, and also rapid development and quick emphasis on quick results. I think a strength of these countries is like fast growing, everything doing very super fast, especially on strategic field. So I studied in the field of medicine, and this is actually my personal feeling of this country. Later on, I had opportunity to stay in Japan for 1 year. It's also like very hierarchical, conservative, emphasis on precision. And it's also different to gain independence at the beginning, in favor of seniority. And as I said, very conservative, mainly focused on long-term focuses. And yeah, and also funding sources, mainly traditional fields that's very safe, and also fewer challenges for opportunities for young researchers. And I will say, yeah, and after that, I stayed in United States. I think all guys already covered what's the uniqueness of United States. You gain highly independence. And it's also mentorship is very important. What I also experienced in the United States at the University of Florida, early career independence, very highly emphasized. And I think especially in a West Coast, it's like Stanford and other entrepreneurship, I think is something unique that you have in US. And also highly competitive funding and risk-taking if you compare to other country. And Germany, regarding Germany, very fast, I don't want to take too much time. It's like very bureaucratic processes. It's take too long. And it's really heavily affecting researchers. If you want to do some project, you just wait, and it's affecting your process of research. And I think, yeah, still in Germany, still it's developed country, but very bureaucratical. And I think mainly another point is very independence. It's giving you full independence on your early career time. Yeah, this is kind of like quick summary from me and from other fellows from our association. I think it's very helpful. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. This is a amazing chart. Hopefully we can share with our attendees later on. So Damir, what would be your intake to this question?
Just Murat, I noticed we had 10 more people join since you asked the question. Can you please repeat it?
Sure. So the question is, when you plan to apply for a PhD, and you have, of course, many countries, many programs. So what would be the first thing to consider when you are choosing a program, and specifically a country, in your experience?
Thank you for the question. For me, the journey of getting into the PhD program was maybe a little atypical from a standard student, because I have started my bachelor's degree here in the US, and my advisor at that time was actually received his PhD from Johns Hopkins, and I was participating in a lot of summer research programs at that time, trying to get engaged in research as much as possible. I really enjoyed it. And then when I graduated from my bachelor's degree, I had two paths in front of me, right? In US, you're allowed to get the PhD right after your bachelor's. But I didn't know if I want to commit myself to the PhD right away. So what I've done is actually I applied to about 5 universities for a master's degree, and then I would see how it goes and decide whether I want to continue my PhD after master's. So what I did, I actually applied to Johns Hopkins, and I got here for my master's. I started working with the professor I'm currently working right now for research, taking courses. And I really enjoyed the passions that people had here for what they're doing. And at the end of the day, I have decided that I do want to stay in this environment where everyone is supportive, everyone's doing what they love, everyone's doing research. It kind of led me to the decision of staying here. Of course, besides being passionate about research, another characteristic that people should be looking into when they're applying for a PhD is how supportive your advisor is, right? If he's the right choice for you, because all people are different. He might be a great person, but you just do not connect with him. I know a lot of cases of this. Do they have enough funding to provide to students to do their research independently? And lastly, maybe I'll say is to choose your program very, very selectively, because, for example, I'm in civil engineering, and civil engineering departments from university to university, their approach to education varies a lot. So you need to find the ones that really fits you in terms of the balance between learning, teaching, and research. Yes, that's
I think that this is a topic that, it's never too much to talk about. How you need to approach this PhD program very carefully, how you need to make sure that it fits you well. Yeah, that's a very good remark, in my opinion. So now I would like to talk a little bit a personal experience of Aisha. When you made this transition from Japan to US. So what would be like a few key differences you would highlight?
Yeah. So I think it's obviously two completely different cultures in general and research-wise. So I would summarize the most important differences as I think previous speakers mentioned as well. There is much less independence in Japan when you start as a PhD student. So basically you are given a lot of structure in your education. I think it might actually be good for some people. It depends on your own personality. If you really need a lot of guidance, if you really need like a really focused approach. So I think for me it worked well. especially when you start as a PhD student. If you're just like thrown into the ocean of research, it's sometimes difficult to figure out where to start. And I think in that sense, Japanese approach is quite good. Another difference I noticed is that the course load is much heavier in the US. So in the first 2 years, you have to take a lot of courses. And I mean, those are actual courses you have to study, you have to pass exams, you have midterms, finals, and so on. We also had courses for the first 2 years, but it was mostly relaxed. You had to like go to lectures and listen to different speakers introducing different fields of research. And as a result, you just needed to write like a report or something. It was not very strict. And I think it has good and bad things to it, because in one sense, I don't have as much of like statistical knowledge, let's say, or some maybe computational experience. But on the other hand, it allowed me to fully focus on my research. I didn't have to spend a lot of time going to lectures, like doing homeworks, preparing for exams. So I think, yeah, this allowed me to really, really focus on my experiments. And another thing is we didn't have, at least in my program, any teaching. So our university is a graduate university. There are no undergraduate programs. So there is no opportunity for me. There was no opportunity for me to teach. Again, it kind of saved me a lot of time to dedicate to my research. But on the other hand, if you are interested in pursuing academic career, if you would like to become a professor, you really need some teaching experience, which I lack. So I would say these are the 3 main differences I noticed.
Nice. Anything to add, Galymzhan, since you also had an experience in Japan?
Yeah, I totally agree with Aisha. So 2 different countries, US or West and East, and mentality is totally different. You need to kind of adapt to this transition. And I also made some summary very quickly. So don't look for main important part. I think it's in China, it's heavily during your PhD, it's heavily focused on publication. And you, as we said, limited your academical independence. It's also my personal experience. And it's very slow progression during your career. And also, let's say, yeah. And in the United States, it's, as you see, after I moved to the United States, I really feel this high, like independent. You're highly independent, and you can do wherever you want. But the most important, like be on time with deadlines. And also this rapid career progression, if you compare to other countries, if you could have good quality publication, and like this pathway is very clean, yeah, just a junior faculty role, like assistant professors, and then you're going up. But in other countries like China and Japan, is really slow, and it's uncertainty. It's also dependent how you're good with, let's say, with your supervisor, with the department, and all, especially in China. And yeah, and after coming to Germany, after coming to Japan, I think it's all same as Chinese experience, but a little bit open, let's say. And in Germany, postdocs, and currently what I'm seeing, you also have independence, not like in the US, but still. And it's also very encouraging to have your independent thoughts, your independent project. It's heavily emphasized here. And also quality over quantity. And yeah, I think it's also like academical independence, as I mentioned, is very important. So for me, is these 4 countries, I would say China, you're limited. Just do what your professor's saying, and mainly grow pretty independent. In the United States, you're really independent, and you can think by yourself, not without group, how group decide. And in Japan, you're also like group decision, very important. You're limited to do some independent things. But in Germany, it's also like similar to US system. Yeah, so this is overall my impression of these countries.
Nice. So I'd like to touch base now about non-academic part of life, right? There is like especially 2 important is, one is the culture outside of university. You interact with local people, and then also the funding, the stipends, So I'd like to start from the cultural shocks of like if you had any, and what are the differences between Kazakhstan versus China versus Japan, US. So if you can, and also let me start with Damir, since you came here early, right, for your bachelor's degree, and have you had this kind of shocks?
So yes, of course. I will speak for my experiences in the US, all the cultural shocks I had here. Of course, I came here right after my high school, and the first time I came to the upstate New York, and the life is there is completely different from what I experienced in Kazakhstan. Of course, the standard list of the cultural shocks in US is, of course, the food scene. Everything is bigger, different quality of food. You need to get used to it. At some point in life, maybe on the second year of my undergrad, I even started having problems because of the food quality. So I had to like switch to only salads and soups at some point, and then stay on this diet. The second is the strangers, complete strangers on the street. You will be walking, just having a nice walk, and they will be saying hi to you, smiling at you like they know you for years. At first, it was very weird for me, but at some point in time, you just assimilate. At some point, you'll be walking past other international students who just came in, and you will be saying, "Hi, how are you?" And they'll be as surprised as you were at some point in time. Other things is that mainly in US, maybe work related, but they have a culture of work until you drop dead. So everyone's here. The policies that they implement on a government level are very different from what you would probably experience in Europe, where you have allocated times for your work hours, and then after that, no one can contact you, you can ignore them. Here, you get an email from your professor at 9 p.m., you need to respond, maybe come to the lab, take a picture of something. So in that case, it's very different from other countries. And the last thing related to your more like usual life, day-to-day life, is healthcare and tax systems in the US is something that you will never experience in Kazakhstan. They're very complicated, they're very convoluted. I'm still in process of understanding them, although I've been here for almost 8 years. So yeah, there are a lot of things to get accustomed to.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I had similar experience when first I arrived. All my neighbors were saying hi, and I generally thought, how do they know? Do I look like someone else they know? Until I figured out that they were just doing out of common courtesy. So yeah, Almjan, you've lived in 4
I
countries.
totally agree with Damir. All 3 points. First one, I think, is food quality. The money that you get in US for your as a scholarship or as a salary, and especially when I stayed in a small town of University of Florida, Gainesville, the food quality that I can afford in United States, it's much lower than in Germany in Europe, what I could say, because I think it's the most important part. The prices that allow you to buy some kind of food quality. I think here in Germany, at least in Berlin, we have to that exactly same amount of money, you can buy really good food. And I think this is very important. Second part, as Damir mentions, is work intensity. I totally agree with that. In the United States, you cannot afford to say no, or it's my not working hour. But in Europe, like especially in Germany, okay, after 5, don't contact me. This kind of normal thing. And lastly, healthcare. I think here in Germany, like healthcare, after coming from US, you kind of like at the beginning receiving this mail post, opening it, like shaking. But after that, realize, okay, 20 euro. 20 euro. So I think it's something different. And just about China, I also did some, I collected. So I think for China, it's some cultural shocks. It's for some people that come from Western countries is very hierarchical, and you need to kind of adapt to this hierarchical structure if you come from Western country. But I think from Kazakhstan, people that come from Kazakhstan, they already know this feeling, or yeah, we kind of similar. And this indirect communication in Japan and in China, it's very important. You need to kind of read between the lines what people are saying, what you both saying. Indirect communication, it's very common. And you need to read between the lines, read the air, yeah, what they saying, what they want to say. And if you don't understand this, they will not work with you, or they will not invite you. They will think about, okay, you are a stranger, and they just make you outlier. And second one, I think, is Japan and China is group-orientated culture. It's very, I think, this is always making decision on group collaboration, and also you need to be in team activities always present, and trying to also build this agashka, other things in China. They also have this guanxi thing. You need to build this in order to get promotion. And I think, yeah, in Japan it's almost same. Okay, formality, and you also need to know these formal protocols. At least I remember one folk said that he worked in company and he printed things, paper on this different way. And after that, they come to say, okay, said, just follow structure, instruction, how you need to print the paper. Yeah, as I think this is company thing. And just lastly, I think after coming to US, first cultural shock, it's like you're very independent and individualistic culture that we don't have in Kazakhstan much more. And another thing, I think it's strong mentorship. So you need to learn how to this in United States, mainly. I think it's embrace independence, also mentorship. In United States is heavily emphasized, and also this working, speaking culture, like very direct, like vice versa, totally opposite to China and Japan, very direct. And sometimes it's blunt communication style, and you really need also to adapt yourself. And as we said, yeah, okay, intensive all culture, everything. And regarding Germany, okay, just one thing, very bureaucratic. And you need to prepare yourself. Okay, in Kazakhstan, you can take your bank card maybe in a couple hours or a couple minutes, but in Germany, 1 month to take your bank account card to receive it. Yeah, just very quickly. I hope it was helpful.
No, it is indeed. Actually gives you. Also, I saw that in Germany you had it. The feedbacks are blunt, like straight away tell.
Yeah, totally. I think in the United States you have a lot of Germans actually, like come from Germany, and I think some things it's like hiking, a lot of things pretty similar that we have here as well.
Yeah, in terms of the feedbacks, in US it's you can't do that, right? The blunt, direct feedbacks, like it needs to be very.
Yeah, I think in US it's like very polite way and very nicely saying these things, but in Germany, no nice, like just directly. You don't take it too personal, and this kind of encouragement in US, like, okay, you did a good job, you need to continue, etc., etc. This kind of let's say support in Germany, you don't have it. It's like you should finish this work. It's your work. There's nothing else. So you don't have this kind of support. Some people, especially from US, they shocked with that. Yeah, because you're all in US, you're often having support and etc., etc. But in Germany, you don't have this.
I see. So before we move on to the questions in the chat, there are like a number of questions. I'd like to ask Aisha, how was living in Japan without knowing the language, I assume, right, in the very beginning? And how did it feel culturally navigating and etc.?
Yeah, so when I came to Japan, of course, after my internship, I started learning something. It was mostly like some characters, but it was not enough. So I remember my first day, I was looking around and all Japanese writings around me, and I was not sure whether it's a shop or a drugstore, pharmacy, or like a restaurant. I didn't know anything, and I was like, I'm in a completely different world. I don't know, like you can get some clues right from the outside world. I couldn't. And so for the first couple of months, I was really, really sad because I didn't like understand anything around me. One thing I would say is you can do research completely in English. My program was completely in English. That's how I entered. But in everyday life, of course, you really need some Japanese. It would immensely help your social life as well. So I made a really strong decision to learn Japanese myself. So within 5 years, I got to a very good level. So once you learn the language, it also opens you to the culture as well. Like you could understand more of social interactions. And as Galymzhan said, in Japanese culture, you need to read the air. Without words, you need to understand what people mean, when they do some things or when they don't. So yeah, I think you can do it without the language, and many students from Japan actually end up finishing their programs without knowing the language in the end. So it's completely doable, but I would strongly advise learning the language. And there are some opportunities. One thing is they provide like a weekly class, a single hour per week. Of course, it's not enough. So it completely depends on you, whether you whether you want to dedicate some time to learn the language on your own.
Interesting. There was a related question in the chat about Germany. Can you do a PhD without knowing German in Germany?
Yeah, I think overall in Europe, like English language is common, and a lot of program mainly focused on English language. So short answer is yes. Without learning German language, it's fine to totally do your PhD here, and I think also other European countries.
I see. Yeah, that's I think pretty nice in that sense in Europe, in many countries in Europe. So there is a question. I don't know how much. I think you can answer based on your country. So the question is, I'm a physician from Kazakhstan. What are the chances of getting into a PhD program without a master's degree? I have some experience of internships and publications in in journals. So
I can start. Speaking from the standpoint of the education in the United States, master's degree is not required for you to go into PhD, and like maybe 50% of the, especially US citizens who are in my cohort are coming straight from the bachelor's degree. And I see that you also have experience in internships and publications, so that will definitely help you. And I think without having master's degree, you have pretty good chances of applying into PhD program in the US.
Nice. So she said actually, then she just mentioned that she's mostly interested in Europe. So Galymzhan, if you can.
Yeah, very quickly. I think for most of universities, it require a master's degree, and maybe some not. It's not like US system. It's very close to our systems that we have in Kazakhstan. So you need to make sure and ask from universities that you're applying. Master degree is required, and at least how many courses you have, how many courses you completed in Kazakhstan, that's also counting.
But on the bright side, I think in Europe, there are much more funding opportunities for master's program, not like in US, right? So there are fellowships you can apply and you can do your master and then continue. Then.
Sorry, I wanted to add for Japan as well. You don't need a master's degree. With the physician degree, you can also apply to PhD programs. I personally know several people who did that, so it's possible.
And then there was a question from Gainesville. Okay, we answered that question. Then the next question brings to the topic I'd like to discuss about money, about the family. So the first question from Arujan is, did you move your family with you during PhD, and how was that experience? I think Galymzhan can start. I know Galymzhan has a big family.
Yeah, I have two sons. I have two sons. So I had first son when we moved to University of Florida. So I think overall, my wife take full charge of looking for them, and I mainly stayed in lab, even on weekend. And yeah, it was very challenging, but at least you had, I think I'm very grateful for my wife because she took all this responsibility regarding child care. And yeah, I think it's fine, but it's also important to have someone with you that sometimes you kind of support and talking, especially when you move to a new country, and sometimes loneliness, it's also can be a big burden to you. So I overall think yes, answer is yes. Short answer is yes. It's good to have your partner together, and having child is I think in Germany, if you come here, social support system is amazing. Like this kindergarten system, it's for free. You also, for your child, you also have every month you can get kind of support for 250 euros. Everyone taking, and I think it's much better in terms of this one. So mostly Germans come back to Germany because of this reason of social systems. It's pretty much affordable, especially for family wise. So I think you can also consider Germany as a PhD for family support.
Yeah, so then I just want to follow up on that sense. The doing PhD in US versus Germany. So you would say it is from stipend money wise, it's much better to sustain a family in Germany?
Yes, absolutely. I think here in Berlin we found really good kindergarten, and it's every month you're only paying 8 euros, and it's amazing, like English German kindergarten where you can they can go, and a really good environment and really good teachers. Quality is very nice, and yeah, I think on this term, most of, as I said, most of the Germans prefer to come back to Germany when they get married and have child. It's because it's much better and affordable system.
And the language, I guess, in kindergarten is German. Is that right? Or
yeah, it's mainly German, but we've been very fortunate to have found this English German kindergarten. So they also have teachers from United States.
I see. Damir, Aisha, can you add on the family part or the stipend?
Yes, I can continue on the topic. So I came for my PhD with my wife, and she never been to the US. So in that case, she's been going through all the same cultural shocks that I've been through at some point in life. But as Galymzhan said, it's incredibly nice to have someone to always talk to share your problems, because I know a lot of international students who are here by themselves completely, coming from countries with smaller populations, maybe like Kazakhstan, and they cannot find cultural groups within the university with whom they can have friendships or socialize. So it's incredibly tolling on their mental health. Speaking on the question of money, as Atorjan also asked, it's very university dependent answer, because the salaries vary from university to university in the graduate programs, and the cost of living is also highly dependent on the city in which you live. For example, if you live in Boston, your cost of living is incredibly high. You might move to Midwest and the cost of living is a little bit lower, but your salaries, of course, stipends will be lower as well. But in general, speaking from my own experience, supporting me and my wife in the first year, it's enough, but not for a lavish life. You know, it's enough to cover all the basics. And maybe Aisha can add to that.
Yeah, I can't speak of bringing a partner or a family, but in terms of funding, the Japanese government provides a scholarship for master and PhD students. It's quite good if you live in a rural area like I did. It was plenty, and university also helps you with subsidized housing and other opportunities. But I've recently heard that because of yen being so weak, it's like getting kind of, as a result, you get less money, but still the cost of living is much lower than in the US. So I think the government scholarship is still pretty good money for a PhD student. You can even save some. Yeah, I can't say about the funding for PhD students in the US, but as a postdoc, usually there is a tiered system where you get like a certain salary based on your experience. I know some universities can provide you with higher salaries, but if you're getting money from government agencies like NIH, for example, it's usually kind of standardized.
And maybe one last thing I would like to add on the topics that Galymzhan was speaking about is the topic of having kids and the support that governments provides, universities provide. In US, for the most part, in most universities, such support is basically non-existent. So having kids in US while you're doing your PhD is incredibly hard financially. And so one of the partners, one of the parents will have to overtake all the domestic chores and caring of the kids at some point because the other one has to work really hard to earn all the money. But one thing that I want to bring up is that lately in US, there have been a quite active movement of unionization of graduate students in universities, and they sign actual contracts between the students and university. And we had one recently signed in Johns Hopkins, which allowed us to increase our salaries and also provide free healthcare for our dependents, including your wife, your kids, your husband, and child support. So this question you need to research on your own, and that is related to the university you want to go to. So if you want to bring your partner and potentially kids, you need to be very careful in this case in US.
I think
that's a good point.
sorry.
Go
There
ahead.
was a comment about working part-time. It was the case when I was a student as well. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to work part-time, but yeah, you can work up to 20 hours, I think, per week. I'm not really sure, but you're right, you can do that. But with most PhD programs, I would say it's really, really hard to find time for a part-time job.
Yeah, I think during PhD it's really, really hard to do a part-time job given that your responsibilities. So we have a number of questions. Some of them I think can be answered in the chat. Specifically, there is one from Kanker of Saturn to Galymzhan, I think mainly about the different application in Germany, in China. I think it's a long question and we can't really cover all of it right here in the panel, so I'll leave it to you in the chat. So another question was about the adaptation. In short, was do you always feel foreigner in the country you are studying, or at some point you can find friends and start to assimilate? Aisha, if you can start from Japan.
I think it's a stereotype which is widely spread. Yes, you will always be a foreigner in Japan, even if you speak fluent Japanese, even if you know all the unspoken rules, you will be. I mean, it doesn't preclude you from having a really rich life, but you will feel it from time to time. In terms of similar thing in the US, I've been here for 2 years and I already feel like I'm part of the group, part of life. So I have assimilated quite well. So I think that's the difference between those two countries.
Nice. How about in Germany?
I totally agree with Aisha. So West and East, I think this is the main difference. In East countries, China, Japan, you will be foreigner. Even you speak perfect Chinese, perfect Japanese. In other part of the world, like Europe and the United States, I think it's pretty common, especially in Berlin. I think here it's like cosmopolitan. You have Turks, you have Russians, you have other people, and it's pretty mixed. So yeah, I don't feel too much this kind of stranger thing. And you just need to learn German language here to feel more comfortable, because I think it's still is kind of barrier for a lot of people to adapt to this environment. Yeah.
Nice. Damir, if you have anything, can you add anything?
Sorry, I was just answering a question in the chat.
Okay, feel free. There is another question. It's a very good question from Miriam. I don't know how if you can answer them. So what about so we talked about Galymzhan, you were doing PhD and your wife was helping you to take care of kids. How about the vice versa? For women, is it possible for wife to do a PhD, and do you have any while having kids? So it's, I don't know, friends' experience. I can tell from my friends' experience. I have a number of, we have Dinara in KAPNA. I don't think she's here. She's a mother of 2 kids. She's doing PhD. Again, it depends. I think it's heavily depends on your partner, how they can support you. It's totally possible. We certainly encourage doing it, but it's should be a mutual agreement, in my opinion.
Yeah, very shortly, I think for me personally is yes, I can support my wife for doing this, especially when she did her master degree in Chinese medicine. Yeah, just very shortly, yes.
On one of the previous panels, the Dana professor from assistant professor at NU brought up this exact topic of whether it's what is a good time to have kids if you want to do PhD, right, as a woman. And for women, it's incredibly hard. And her response was preferably not to have kids while doing PhD, because this is incredibly tolling. Again, not only on your mental health, but also physical, taking care of kids. Of course, there's never a good time, but you need to approach this question with very great care, especially when you're doing a PhD, because you spent a lot of time on it, and you need to take care of your kids at the same time. That's just another level of resilience that you need to have as a person inside of you to be able to pull it off.
Yeah, I can't agree more. And there is one question. This is more about the social science, but I think we can a little bit extend it to our fields. So the US PhD programs are rigorous but heavily focused on US. Where would be the most suitable destination to pursue a social science PhD with a focus on Kazakhstan? Asking Danyar.
I can answer this question. Maybe I'm in civil engineering, so I'm not super familiar with social sciences, but I can speak to that from the standpoint of seeing a lot of posts from the neighboring George Washington University. They have a specialized institute for social sciences that are focused on Eurasian relationships, like international relationships. So I know some people who goes there to study social sciences, and they focus on studying social problems in Kazakhstan. So it is possible, yes.
And also, I think the Galymzhan, you've given, for example, you studied in US and you went to Japan. I think that kind of tells you that tells everyone that experience of none of the studies in no countries the studies are very focused only one thing. That's what makes research universal, I guess. Being in US, you can study Kazakhstan or vice versa, or it can apply anywhere.
So to this question, very shortly. So I heard that in UK, there's a lot of universities, a lot of Bolshak scholars that going with their money to do research regarding related to Kazakhstan. And I think it's totally fine for UK universities. You're coming with your money, doing wherever project you want, if you want to do about Kazakhstan. And as far as I know, there's a lot of studies have been done in the UK universities with Bolshak scholars. So maybe this answer your question. You try to apply UK universities with Bolshak. Yeah.
Then we have a additional interesting question about what's the difference between half-time, part-time, and full-time PhD program, and how this impacts the duration and the workload of a PhD student. I'm not sure. I don't really know many have a part-time PhD students, so I can't really comment anyone.
maybe I can do very short. How I understand this question, is it possible to do another work during my PhD project? I don't know. Some people manage to do it. Sometimes I look for social media and I think how they're amazing. Managing this kind of doing another job and opening company and doing. But overall, if you in the United States, it's very focused and very long time. And yeah, some people manage and this is amazing, but I think it's very hard to do this balance. And I don't know, especially in what my experience in the United States and Germany, it's impossible. It was impossible for me to do another job. And okay, sometimes you can do some tutoring and other thing, but for me it was very hard.
I think in classical PhD program in Japan, there is no option to do part-time. But in the US, I think in our lab, we had several applicants who were interested in doing an industry PhD, meaning they still hold their job in the company and do like a 2-3 year research in the lab if it's like directly related to what they're doing in their company and matches to what we are doing in the lab. So unfortunately, those didn't end up in our lab, but there were talks about that.
So I think I can a little bit relate to Damir's. I had a friend who was doing PhD part-time. He was doing electrical engineering, so maybe it's in engineering more possible. He works in a company and he does a part-time PhD. So for a couple of months he's working, it comes back, does some research, goes back, and it of course took a very, very long time, around like 9-10 years, I think, for him to do the PhD. So American universities in US, they allow that in some cases. And I think it's very dependent on the country and on the program, from my experience. Damir, can you comment on that?
I unfortunately do not know anyone who is doing part-time PhDs, but in general, from what I know, in US, this is very atypical unless, as Aisha said, you're doing industry PhD, where you're already a part of the workforce at some company and you want to just obtain a doctoral degree at some point along the way. However, of course, there is a trade-off. You don't immerse in the research as deeply as full-time students, and your program is typically will be longer and more slow-paced. So it really depends on your career goals and what you want to do. But of course, it's an option, but very unusual, I would say, in US nowadays.
Yeah, I think it's a full-time dedication, basically, and that's kind of answers that. And it depends on the program. So I think we are getting close to the end of our session. If any speakers have a general remark or suggestion about the country, suggestion to students who are planning to apply to Germany or US or Japan, do you have any few words?
I have only probably one thing to say is if you're an undergrad in Kazakhstan or someplace else and you're applying for a PhD anywhere in the world, I would say the main thing is to always take advantage of all opportunities given to you, search for them. For example, the way I came into research was through summer undergraduate program that I have participated in during my undergrad at SUNY Poly, which is predominantly a teaching university. So you would think there's no research opportunities, but typically all the professors during the summer, when they're a little bit more free from teaching, have those projects they want to work on independently on their free time, and they typically hire undergrad students for that. So take all of the opportunities. Do not hesitate to reach out to anyone. I mean, being rejected an opportunity is better than not reaching out at all. So take advantages of everything that's given to you.
Aisha?
Yes, so I would say that consider Japan if you're detail-oriented, if you're structure-oriented, and also if you would like to learn more about culture, explore the country. It's a great place to do PhD. I think difficulties will be everywhere, but abroad is a bit easier to publish. I know that some Kazakh PhD programs require you to publish with the limited resources that they have. Anyway, wherever you go, I think it would be a good choice. One thing I would say, yes, as I said, difficulties will exist everywhere. Remember that like for a tree, if it's replanted, it takes up to 3 years to recover. So yeah, I think just time will help you. And I'm sure our students are so bright, so everyone will do well.
Thank you. Amjan?
Yeah, very short. I think how the way that Aisha and Damir came to PhD, finished, I think this very natural way, applying for internship, go to this lab, experience the environment, talk to people, and make this decision. Otherwise, you will disappoint during your PhD if you enter wrong lab, wrong supervisor, and it's very often happening. So it's very important. And second part, considering your long-term plans. Are you planning to go back to Kazakhstan, or are you planning to work in these countries? It's also very important. So if you choose option B, okay, your supervisor should be very influential, etc., etc. I think this is also a very strategic way to thinking about when you're selecting university, institution, wherever country you choose. Yeah.
Right. I think this is a great conclusion of this session and the conference in general. There are many, in the modern days, there are many resources available for PhDs. You can read, you can follow on LinkedIn and the blog posts, but here we try to focus specifically Kazakhstani students, those who are trying to apply for PhD. And we like to thank all of you for coming and listening. And of course, we'd like to thank very much our speakers for your time, for sharing your experience. Hopefully, we'll be in touch, and the speakers, if they allow, whoever didn't get to have a chance to ask their questions, if they can reach out to you directly, asking specifics of your country or your experience. I wish you all a wonderful rest of the weekend. Stay safe. See you next time.
Thank you everyone for attending, and thank you to Murat and the rest of the KAPNA community for organizing this event. It was incredibly great and informative. So thank you one more time.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.